Welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast. I'm Chris Anderson, your host. I'm looking forward to diving into today's episode and giving you a little bit more direction so you can elevate your business, elevate your life, and make a difference in the world. If you like anything you hear today, make sure you share it along, make a difference in someone else's life. And if you do like something, make sure to go to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, and subscribe. It makes a whole world of a difference for us here at the podcast to continue to do this, to bring great guests, great information to you so you can elevate your business, elevate your brand, elevate your life, and take big steps moving forward. Thanks again, and let's dive into the episode. Welcome back to another recording, another episode of the Elevate Media Podcast. Today, we're going to be diving into the topic of networking, but not just how to network, how to nurture those connections once we've made them. And we're talking to expert and author about this topic, Kurt Schmidt. Kurt, welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast, man.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to dive into this. I think it's glazed over a lot is networking, but then nurturing those connections even more so. I'm looking forward to diving into it. I know you just authored your book, The Little Book of Networking, which explains more about this topic. So we're going to kind of pick from that, I'm sure, and people can go check it out on Amazon and get it there if they like what they hear and want to hear more from you or read more from you. So, but to start, you got to take a breath because I get excited and I get talking fast, as people know on the show. And so going to take a breath and take a step back and start with a little bit of an icebreaker that I've been trying to include now, just to have a more fun and personal approach to the conversations. So, Kurt, this one is, I'm interested to hear your answer. If you have an answer, we'll see. So, who is, and I'm going to preference it, this doesn't have to be current. It can be past. Okay. We're adults now. Yep. Who is your current or past celebrity crush?
Oh, boy, celebrity crush. That's a good one. Honestly, I hate to admit this in a recording, but my wife will kill me if I lie. So it would have to be Daniel Craig. Ever since he took over as James Bond, I was like, that's a good looking human being right there.
He's man, yeah. I know he's a little on the shorter side. So,
he is, yeah.
But his physique, I would love to be jacked like that.
I know, right?
And I'm working on it. So
yeah, it's but it's also his attitude, his confidence, and also, to be honest, just the way he carries himself outside of things. Like he was a stormtrooper. He did a cameo as a stormtrooper. Right.
Yeah,
in the new Jedi movies or whatever. And so it's like,
and Knives Out and just,
Knives Out. Like he just seems like a fun person. Doesn't take himself too seriously.
Right. I'd have a conversation with him just to see his personality.
Yeah. So I would have to say that.
Nice. That's funny. That's cool. Yeah, I know. I look back, I would say Blake Lively.
Oh, good choice.
She married a Ryan Reynolds, so she has to have a good personality, like a good sense of humor. So I
can't imagine what that household's like.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But going back when I was young, this is a funny story. So when I was little, like 8 or 9, my thing was we would always watch Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy on TV as a family, my parents and I and my siblings. And I remember this to the day, like today, I still remember this moment. We're sitting on the couch. I was sitting, it was like a sectional. So I was in the corner section, corner part, sitting there with a pillow, watching Wheel of Fortune. Vanna White walks out in one of her, iconic gowns. And me being like an 8-year-old kid, first of all, I couldn't whistle at that time. I didn't know how to whistle. But I sat there and she walked out and I go, woo, and made the whistle noise, like without whistling. And my parents just both turned.
I bet they just died.
What? And I got super red and I put the pillow over my face. So when I was little, Vanna White was my celebrity crush. So,
you could have done a lot worse.
Right. So that's funny. Well, thank you for sharing. That's good. That's awesome. So now, yeah, and you think of these celebrities too, like they didn't just start out famous. Yeah. Even the ones who had parents who were famous, like they still had to take like the effort and work to want to do that and make connections. And I think that's why it's so crucial, like to have a network and build a network, because you don't know where it could lead. It's not always just direct clients.
No, it's an amazing segue you're doing, Chris, because if you look at Johnny Depp, he had a friend, he was dating a girl who had a friend who got him into Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's how he launched his career. Like, seriously. And Brad Pitt, same way, tripped and fell. into things. Harrison Ford, famously, he was a carpenter, building cabinets for George Lucas. And he was like, you know what, you should be in my 50s, or whatever it was, a 50s movie about hot rodding, And then he was like, oh yeah, well, we could do you for Star Wars. And
just a little part there. Yeah.
So again, I reference this in a number of talks that I do where I talk about famous actors specifically, because the majority of a good chunk of them that we know, it is because of networking. It's because of the people who they knew and who knew them is how they became known to us.
Yep. It's huge. Like I always say it, and I kind of use something I heard Grant Cardone say once, and it's morphed it, I guess, paraphrase, but if they don't know, you're not going to grow. People have to know you, in any form to grow a business, to have more speaking engagements, to get on more podcasts. People have to know. And that's why the networking piece is so crucial. So people know that people, got to network, and, we've done other episodes on how to network and how to connect with people. But now I'm excited for this is to dive into okay, we've made those connections, and maybe you see something, maybe it's a client, maybe it's a partnership, maybe it's just they have a podcast and you'd like to be on or have them on. But obviously it takes time. It takes some building to get to those moments. So how do we nurture those new connections we've made, Kurt?
Yeah. So I think first of all, we have to shift our mindset about networking. So to your point, networking is not a singular event, right? It's not where we go to a place, put on our name tag that says, and then we try to interrupt other conversations that are happening to introduce ourselves. That's not networking. Networking is a career-long process. It's a lifelong process. It's a lifelong mindset that you need to have in order to truly help yourself grow. And then along the way, being able to help others, right? JFK said, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? Yep. So that's the goal of networking, is to go out with intention and deliver value to people, and then you will get value in return. And the thing is, you also have to separate sort of who's in your network, right? So what I like to call, so you have friends, right? These are people who you call up when you need to move a mattress. They go to they're part of your wedding. You send them Christmas cards regularly, all those things. And then you have coworkers, right? You have people that you interact with and are friendly with because you work together, right? But in the middle is this kind of networking piece that I think people miss so much about. And this is what I like to kind of refer to as micro partnerships. So you're not going to be exchanging Christmas cards with these people. These are professional contacts, and your goal with each other is to be honest and say, I'm looking for opportunities for you and you are looking for opportunities for me. It's a partnership, but not in a sort of formal way, right? So first of all, you've got to change your mindset that you are not out to make best friends. Now, that could happen. That would be fantastic. That's not something you should avoid. And you're not looking for people necessarily to hire you or buy your services or things like that. It's not part of your work. This is something that is separate from those things. And people say to me all the time, well, I don't have time for that. And I'm like, you're doing it already. You're just not doing it intentionally. Yeah. And that's why building this over time and having a mindset that these are relationships I'm going to build over time. Because, you want to be able to have those things and work on them, not when you need them, is when you don't need them, right? It's they tell people all the time, work on your resume when you don't need to work on your resume. So you need to be doing this, because I see too many people that have worked at places for 5-10 years. They leave and they have no network except for what was at the company, or people that are just coming out of school. Similar situation. They have no reputation. So it's really funny because people say, well, how do I get a job without experience? And I'm like, it's not about experience, it's reputation. Right. And so I've heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about this in the past. If you don't like the idea of personal branding as a term, just think of it as your reputation.
That's huge. Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it, because it's how do people perceive you? What do they see or think about when they hear your name or things like that?
Because if you don't put it out there, Chris, they're going to make up their own story. That's the thing that I try to pound into people's heads that are like, oh, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. And I'm like, okay, so if you're not out there letting people know who you are, they're going to make it up themselves. So we do as people, right? Yep. We see people in our social feeds or we see things like that, and we make a judgment based on a book on his cover. And nobody appreciates that, but we're human beings and that's what we do. Right. So we make those judgments. So if you're not out there being intentional about what your reputation is, then people will make up your reputation for you.
Yeah, that's huge. And Yeah, people make assumption. We all know what that does when you assume. And I think that's why, I mean, even when you do put yourself out there and like share and things, people are still going to, draw conclusions or assume things that like have no parallel really.
Oh, sure. But honestly, the majority of people don't care. Like they just don't care. Like, so too many people think that that's the narcissist in us. We think people are thinking about us and they're not, right? So if you, and I encourage all the listeners to close their eyes and think of a coworker you've had maybe in the last 5 or 10 years that you haven't seen for a long time. If you think about, put that person in your mind, that like somebody you liked working with, are they desperate for a new job right now? First answer is probably going to be no, they're probably not. But how do you know that? Right. How do you know that? They probably are dying to get out of the place that they're working at. If you look at the statistics, 70 to 75% of people are disengaged at work. So you have to imagine that, 8 out of 10 people that as professionals are looking for new opportunities.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, it's a mindset change that has to be really important. So to your point, Chris, we have to think about this for the long term. So what I've found is that building systems around helping you stay connected with people and staying intentional is what you need to do. It's all about building systems that help you do it, because I have so many people that say, I can't do this. I've got a family. I can't go to these events after work. Well, that's the great thing about the pandemic, is that things have changed a bit, is that we have digital and in-person networking now. So you can utilize both.
Yeah. And that's the systems and structures, they're game changers. Networking in any part really of building a business, like, because we all are busy. Like, you can use that excuse. I have kids. I have this, blah, 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 blah. Like, we all have stuff. We all have stuff going on.
We all are busy. Everybody's busy.
But so I think that separates really a lot of the successful people from not. Maybe it's their mindset, but also just having those systems. And so for nurturing these connections we've made, like, what are some systems you found or you've created that have been beneficial for you? Yeah.
So in the book, I talk about a specific system I've used for the last 10, 15 years, which is about the most simplest thing you can imagine, which is I have a spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, I have a number of tabs that sort people basically by the type of connection that they are. So it could be, this is a business owner or entrepreneur. That's another tab, right? One could be just professional consultants, right? So individual consultants that are out there, and then recruiters and so on and so forth. So whatever industry I'm focused in, you have these people that are in a space around you, because the important thing about building a network is to build a wide network, right? Like they always tell you, when you're an expert, try to be narrow and deep, right? That's absolutely true. Be narrow and deep in your business, but in your network, you want to be broad. And because if you think about it, especially in enterprise sales, if you're an enterprise salesperson that happens to be listening to this, I'm just using it for scale. Yeah. But to buy a ERP system for an enterprise system, you have 100 stakeholders that you need to convince to buy a new thing that runs Walmart's frozen pizza supply chain, right? You have 100 stakeholders that need to be convinced to buy your software or your product to be able to help them do that. So if your network is narrow and deep in just you're going to have a hard time convincing all those other stakeholders that you're of value, that you bring value. So the idea is that the spreadsheet lists those people's names. It also lists what are they looking for, because I'm very specific when I meet with people and say, what are you looking for? And I'm also very intentional by saying, this is what I am looking for. It's the one thing that I think people need to understand right off the bat, is that you've got to have a pitch. You've got to be able to go in and say, hey, I'm Kurt Schmidt. I'm the president at Foundry. We do custom software, UX, UI, and software development. I also do a lot of speaking events. I just recently wrote a book called The Little Book of Networking, and I'm also do a podcast. So I'm looking for guests, and I'm also interested in meeting people that could potentially use our services. What are you looking for? Yeah. And I try to get that out, boom, as quickly as possible and move on to what value can I provide for you? You know who I am. You know what I'm looking for. That sets up the relationship very quickly to be at ease, because people are like, we're again, back to being human. We're defensive, right? We're like, what does this person want from me? Right. So you can start the relationship in a much better way by being very intentional right out the gate. I know it might be uncomfortable for some people, but I promise you, once you get over that and you can get you're good at your quick pitch, it'll set others at ease, and they'll be like, okay, this is a person I can share with. They don't have a hidden agenda or something, right?
You put the cards on the table. They know what
as soon as possible.
Yep.
So then in the spreadsheet, there's their names, there's what they're looking for, because now I have an understanding because I did my pitch and they told me what they're looking for. And then over here, I've got basically the date that I last contacted them. And that in that field, there's a formula that says at 60 days, it turns yellow. And then at 90 days, it turns red.
Love it. I'm an Excel guy. Google Sheets and all this. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I like it. Yeah, I like it. But then it gets point. Yeah. And
I've done some, and believe me, over the years, I've added some Zapier webhooks that allow me to like track emails and things. So, but start with a basic spreadsheet, put the names of these professional contacts in, what are they looking for? And then a date field. And then you've got a simple formula that lets you know. And I check this thing. I have it as my home page on my Google Chrome. Like when I start up Google Chrome, it's the first thing that pops up. So I can see if something's turning yellow or turning red. And then if I look, it also allows me to sort of groom that those people too, right? Because if I see somebody's red and I'm like, I really don't have anything to share with them and they don't have anything to share with me, you might want to put them into a 6-month file and not a 90-day file and start to slide them over, right? And I have a ton of people in a sort of a check-in twice a year sort of thing. Just like, how's it going? Hey, I've talked in a while. Just wanted to see, are you still doing branding for companies? And, what type of branding? You got any new work to share with me? Here's some new work that I've done. Here's some things that I'm interested in. Here's some things that I'm looking for now. And it's just checking in with those folks. And so again, build that, and it makes it super easy. You can process it all in a half an hour. And you can reach out to the people digitally. You can set up meetings, do all those things, and it's real simple. So that's the system. Awesome. I go into a bit more depth on the why behind it and the different things in the book, but that's basically it.
I love it. And I think and you always hear in business, well, okay, I say that, whatever, generalities, you always hear this, but like in business, I've heard a lot at least that, the gold is in the follow-up,
it absolutely is.
Staying connected. It's true. Like if you can stay connected, some conversations I've started, like it's taken a year or two before they even became a client. Like, and so I think, but so much gets lost if we don't have some sort of system.
Well, we're building trust with people because if you think about society today and things that we're dealing with, you look at the political atmosphere, there's a lot of mistrust out there. You look at, there's a war going. I mean, there's so many things going on that are pulling our attention. There's the pandemic. We're still reeling from that. People have trust issues today more than they've ever had before. And so, and we get a lot of spam, right? You get a lot of messages on LinkedIn trying to sell you things. So people reaching out to you, right? Nobody answers the phone anymore, right? So you have to lead with intention and be very clear about like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm trying to do and where I'm trying to go. And I believe that having you as a part of my network would be super valuable. I would love to hear, what are you looking for and what are you interested in? Because maybe I can provide that. And to be honest, it could be years from now before there is some sort of value trade or interaction. Doesn't matter. That's not the point.
Right.
Too many people think of networking as like, in that moment, I'm supposed to get something. No, it's so easy when you talk to somebody about the stock market. They're like, yeah, I get it. You put money in, you let it sit there over time, you pay attention to it, and you retire, right? With all the wealth in the world. Your network is your net worth. So if you're not investing in it regularly and building it over time, just like you would approach a stock market or stocks, things like that, and give it the attention it needs, you're going to be in the same position that other people are.
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today. Yeah,
and I think that's crucial, is remembering to nurture, because we're so transactional in today's society, and that can get lost. I mean, I'm guilty of it sometimes. And so like just reminding yourself of like, hey, this is like this is not like a transaction. This is a relationship. And
exactly,
to build any relationship, there's got to be give. And
because you actually like that person, right? And but again, that's the thing we're taught when we're children. Our parents are like, who's your friend at school? Who's your friend at school? Well, everybody's technically your friend, you just don't know everybody, so if you've got colleagues and people you've worked with, you need to stay in touch with them and find out what are their needs, what are they looking for. And it's so great once you start to build up that list of things that people are looking for, and you can go and you run into a situation. Maybe I'm talking to Chris and he's like, yeah, I'm really looking for people that are interested in this thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 2 clients or something that is yesterday, for example, I met a leadership coach. He just started his practice about a year ago, and he's looking for clients. And he told me, like, he was very specific. He's like, I'm looking for clients that are in this specific area that could really use help with this sort of dysfunctional teams sort of approach.
Gotcha.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I know 2 guys right now that I should introduce you to. I don't know if they're buying right now,
right?
But you should meet them because I know they've complained to me about their teams. And so I want to introduce them to some. So a lot of times I will do the double blind, right? I'll reach out to the person and say, hey, I've got this person. Would you like an intro to them? And they could say no, right? I don't just automatically intro people unless they've given me the okay,
right,
to say, no, go ahead and you can blind, you can set me up on blind dates, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, and that helps, like having that system to remember like who was looking for what.
Oh yeah. Nobody can remember
everything. Right. And I think, I don't know, at least for me, and I'm sure for you too, and probably people listening, like it's really cool. Like it's a really good feeling when you're talking to someone and they're like, yeah, I'm looking for this. Either they need help with something or they're looking to help someone with something. And you got someone else who needs that help, and you can make that connection, and there's nothing in it for you really except connecting those 2 people.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Because you don't know where that goes, but like, I don't know. It's like
back to human nature, Chris, right?
Yeah.
Like the highest fear that people have is public speaking, and then death. And then right behind that is asking for help. So it's when you do have somebody that tells you something that they're looking for, that is something important to pay attention to, because that's really hard for people to ask for help, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking for this thing. I'm in need of this thing in order to get me to the level that I want to be at successful and be where I want to be at. That's something you should take great care. And that's why I say document it, put it in the spreadsheet, make a quick note of it, and then refer to it and keep it up to date and keep it regular. It's real simple with reminders and we got notifications and all these things all day long. It's not difficult. It's not difficult to do.
No. Yeah. And so I like that, having a system of tracking things, reminders.
Yeah. And and I want to make one thing clear, because I get salespeople all the time. They're like, well, I have a CRM.
Right.
And I said, no, this is a personal CRM. This is a relationship tool to help you manage those relationships, right? My wife has a spreadsheet that's built just for Christmas card addresses and things, and she keeps it up to date, and she knows who gets Christmas cards and all these things. And
we have that too.
This is the same type of thing. This is not a CRM where you're adding people to a stupid
sales
funnel.
Like, exactly.
Like this is now, don't get me wrong. They could turn into something like that. Then you can move them over to that at that point. But that is not our goal. This is our thing. This is not something we're reviewing in a sales meeting. This is our work for our profession, our career.
Yep.
Which us growing our career can benefit our organization that we work for. Sure. Yes. It can.
Right.
But you don't just dump it into there and manage it like a sales funnel. That's not what this is. This is back to your point. This is about relationships, not about a funnel and moving them, trying to get them through the stages. So,
right. Yeah. Nurturing, and eventually they'll know about your stuff. And then when they're ready for it, they'll know who to go to, because you've been just nurturing that relationship. And so it'll be a no-brainer for them. So, So with that, like you talked about systems, you talked about that process and following up and keeping it personable. What would you say are maybe 3 top ways that individuals listening to this could start to nurture their relationships? Like, are you an advocate of sending them articles? Like,
Mm.
what is it? Just a message? Like, what do you kind of your top 3 go-to ways to nurture?
Yeah. So I would say, in terms of once you have those people in your network, one thing that is great is just sending out updates. And so you can do that a number in scale, right? So one can be, so let's say there's the more immediate need, right? So I know somebody who got laid off, and they're the only breadwinner in the household, and they've got a family, and they're desperate to get a job as fast as possible. So they're networking. What they should be doing is sending out a weekly job hunt newsletter that to all their connections, basically like, hey, here's my interviews this week. Here's who I'm interested in. This is, as a reminder, this is what I'm looking for. Here's a nice picture of me and the kids because I have a lot of free time now, and blah, blah, blah. And you post that to social, and you send emails out, and you keep it super regular. So if you're in a desperate need for a solution, consistency beats strategy every day of the week.
Yeah.
So stay consistent and keep letting people know, because if you hear, again, back to human nature, you hear a friend that's like, oh my gosh, they just lost their job, and then you don't hear from them for 3 months, you assume they got a job, right?
Right.
Yeah. But maybe I've talked to so many people that are like, no, I'm still looking. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I not know this? I probably in the last 3 months ran into 2 or 3 people, but guess what? You weren't top of mind because you were not staying top of mind with me. So there's the more like, just be clear and remind people and stay top of mind of what you're looking for, right?
For sure.
So especially if there's an immediate need. If it's more in the medium sort of Goldilocks category, it is a thing where, as you're out consuming things, if you have your network categorized correctly, if you see something or you hear a podcast episode, I do this all the time. Like I started a podcast episode club, not a book club, where it's from tons of random podcasts, but it's like, hey, this is a great episode. You probably never listened to the series, but this one episode of this thing I think you would find interesting. So that's something I'll do, is be like, hey, I found this nugget I think is really interesting. It could be a YouTube video, be something that speaks to maybe the professional consultants column or tab that I have, and says, how to move from corporate to professional consultant or something. And it could be a cool YouTube video I saw or something. Or it could be something for business owners about like, what's going on, what's the predictions for the economy for 2023 or something. Excuse me. As I'm consuming things out there, I'm trying to look, that's the fun thing about it. It's not just about me consuming things. I've added the job of kind of curator now a bit, what I'm doing, which makes it fun and interesting to me to add that like a little asterisk to what I'm doing, so I don't feel so guilty just watching tons of TikTok.
Right.
Is that I can send these TikToks now to some people that I know that work in the marketing business, right? Oh, check out, this is a really funny video about what it's like to work at a marketing agency and whatever, and I got my marketing agency tab, and I'll send it to those people. So anyways, then there's that. And then there's more the sort of longer term, like I said, like every 90 days, it is sort of just a quick email or a message on LinkedIn, or if you're a texting person or something, it's just a kind of like, how are things going? Are you still looking for this thing you told me you're looking for? Have you found this job? Have you found that client? Has anything changed in that? So you're checking in on those folks, and you're trying to keep it regular, where you're messaging them to ask them questions and get up-to-date information. But at the same time, what you're doing when you do that is you are staying top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge too, because one, they're not going to remember who you are right away or what you do after the first meeting. And so like you said, keeping that top of mind or staying in their top of mind consistently will increase your chances for whatever is needed. Maybe they know someone who needs someone to speak, or someone who needs your service, or blah, blah, whatever it is. You're top of mind now because you stay consistently connected with them. And I think that's a crucial piece right there for people to realize how important it is for personal growth, for business growth, for just whatever, to help more people. So that's awesome. And
staying top of mind is huge. And I tell people all the time, they get all wrapped up into like, I don't know what to post on social, and I don't know what to send in an email. It doesn't really matter. We're trying to stay top of mind. So as long as it's not something really gross, like, like post just post a picture of like your backyard and say, boy, it looks nice out today. Whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be an influencer. Too many people jump from like, I'm an introvert to all of a sudden I've got to be, Mr. Beast or something, or PewDiePie, right?
Yeah.
It's a spectrum. Okay. You don't have to go nuts and, and build a YouTube studio and all these things, just be yourself.
Yep.
That's what people are interested in. They're interested in you more than they're interested in whatever you're selling.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's great. And a good kind of way to start wrapping things up, because you've dropped a lot of good little tidbits that people can now take away. Yeah, absolutely. And implement and start nurturing their community and their network now through that. So last couple questions, one being, I've done this recently on a lot of guests, and it just intrigues me to hear their answer. If you could spend an hour or two at lunch asking someone questions or diving into their story or hearing or learning from them, dead, alive, or fictional, who would you choose?
Oh man.
And why?
Well, if they were gone, I'd probably choose Benjamin Franklin. I've read his biography or his autobiography and biographies on him. Just a fascinating person that came from not a great place and then turned into a really great man, and then kind of went kind of weird and Elon-y, like in the end, moving to France and stuff. Like, I don't know. I just think he's a fascinating character in the creation of a country. And I think Benjamin Franklin would be really interesting to chat with. I have a feeling I wouldn't like him if I met him, but it doesn't matter. Like, I still want to talk to him. And in alive, honestly, like there's just, there's so many fantastic, people out there, thanks to my podcast that I do, Schmidt List, and I get to meet and talk with so many people on a regular basis. So I don't think there's any necessarily celebrity as much as, or people, a known person, as much as I just like to keep talking to more people, because I've always learned more from other people's experiences than I have from books or academia. And so I'm sure a number of people, if you're listening, you're probably nodding your heads. I've learned so much from other people and them sharing their experiences and their experiences with me versus reading it in a book. Yeah. And so the more opportunity I get to do that, which is one reason why I do the podcast, which is like networking at a crazy level. But that's the other reason to network, and why networking is important, because you will grow because of your network, and you can diversify your network, and you can start to build relationships with people maybe who don't look exactly like you do, or don't come from the exact same background you do. And you can learn a lot of things very quickly. So it's about personal growth. It's not, and I don't mean just in terms of financial or career wise, but as a human being.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those are good answers. I think we can learn from everybody. In some form or fashion, even if it's like what not to do, if they're not.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, like people ask like, you seem to really have the, being a good boss sort of figured out. And I was like, I learned it mostly from bad bosses.
Right.
I didn't, exactly. my good bosses didn't teach me a lot, because, I didn't have to pay attention to them as much as the eggshells I had to walk around a bad boss. So
right. Exactly. Those good answers though. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
To kind of close off the episode, if you would be talking to someone who's just starting on their journey, trying to build a life around their business, get out of the 9-to-5, what would be one piece of advice you would give them?
I think, again, back to your network is your net worth. I hate to pound it into, but I can't put a stronger point on, finding people that are, when you're first starting out, finding people that are in your immediate industry, maybe people with the same titles or selling the same products or services that you are, and trying to connect with those people and learn about the challenges that they have and that they're experiencing. And first of all, you won't feel so alone, because it can be a very lonely place when you're just starting out, right? And you have this thing that was invented recently called imposter syndrome, which to me, it's, everybody's new at something at some point, so it's okay, So for me, it's important to think about that just getting started and staying consistent with your network, even if it's just a small network, even if your spreadsheet just has one tab and 10 people on it, that's cool. You don't need to have 100 people on there, but just start somewhere and stay consistent once you start.
Yeah, love it. I love that. And that's a great way to wrap things up. So, Kurt, thanks again for sharing everything you did on this episode. Where, besides, I mean, your book's on Amazon, where else can people connect with you or direct them that way?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I really, again, I can't say enough. I appreciate the opportunity and I enjoy the show. So thank you for having me on. And yeah, you can find the Little Book of Networking on Amazon. It's available on Kindle and well, soft paperback cover. I don't know. It's I've gotten tons of great reviews. It's a real quick read. It's more of a handbook. It's 100 pages. So it's a nice and easy thing that can slip into a messenger bag or a purse and take with you. Something you can read on a flight in like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It's meant to be something that's actionable. So you can find it there. And I'm most active on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Kurt Schmidt. Just look for the bald guy with the beard and glasses. It's pretty easy to find me. And I share a lot there about leadership, about team building, and then just general ideas around digital transformation and things that are going on in the technical industry. So yeah, connect with me. I'd love to add you to my network.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah. Everyone, make sure you get connected. Take him up on it. Like, seriously,
Please.
Yeah. And check out his book. And again, Kurt, thanks so much for being on Elevate Media podcast today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And thanks so much for tuning into this episode today. If you found value at all from this episode, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It just helps us get this show, these messages out in front of more people. And don't forget to share this with someone who you think could benefit from listening to as well.